Hello and welcome to another Bodgit and Leggit video. Today we are going to discuss on tips and tricks and stuff to look out for when you're buying a used car. Not so much a brand new car, but a used car. Now, there's loads of things, and I'm bound to miss a few things, but I'm going to go through the most important ones. There's a couple really important ones. Under no circumstances buy a car when it's raining. Now, what I mean by that is make sure you look at the car when it is dry. You don't want to look at a wet paint job, because a wet paint job, it could make the car look really good, really nice shiny colour. When it dries, it can be horrible, and it can hide so many things. So never buy a wet car. The other thing is, never believe the person that's selling it. Under no circumstances believe them, because chances are they're lying to you. Some people write on Tipex when the engine was serviced. They even put it when the timing belt was done. Now, they could have just written that. That means nothing. And even getting receipts nowadays, receipts mean nothing, because you can download receipts off the internet, you know, so it can all be lies. If there's a receipt and you can call a garage and you know that garage exists, well, then that's different. But they're the kind of two most important things. Don't buy when it's wet, and don't believe the person at all, because at the end of the day they're trying to sell you the car. Chances are they know there's maybe a few things wrong with it, and they won't tell you that, because everybody does. It's just the way it goes. And you also want to ask them the reason why they're selling it, and see what they say. Don't just say, oh yeah, I'm here to look at the car. Why are you selling it? Another good thing to check for is when you actually ring the person, say, I'm interested in the car you have for sale. Now, if they say which one, well, then you know there may be a dealer that could be working from home, and they could be, you know, you just don't know. So they're the kind of the important ones, and we're going to check on the car now some of the tips that I'd like to share. One more quick one I forgot to mention is it is vitally important also to do a HPI check on a used car. Nowadays it's so easy. You can do it through your phone, through a text message, do it on the internet. It's very cheap. And believe me, especially if you're spending a lot of money, because even second-hand cars can be a lot of money, you want to do a HPI check. Make sure there's no money owed on it. So they're the three really big things. They're not buying it when it's wet, because you can't tell the paint job. Don't believe the person, anything they say that they're selling it to you, and do a HPI check. Now we're going to get on to the other kind of little things. Another good one is you don't want to see the engine bay too clean. Now, what I mean by that, as you can see, there's all kind of crud, hopefully that's coming through, there's all crud and crap all around the engine bay. If the engine bay is absolutely immaculate, as you can see from down here, you know, all the stuff you get on the road, just dust and stuff. If the engine bay is absolutely immaculate, it means they've just jet washed it. Now, if they've jet washed it, why would you jet wash an engine bay? If you've got a show car, that's different. But if you've got a normal car, you've no reason to do it. So why are they doing it? Are they doing it to hide an oil leak? Are they doing it because it's leaking water or oil or brake fluid or power steering? It's, you know, something could be leaking. So that kind of goes without saying. Obviously the best way to check a car is get it on the lift, but you can't always do that. So if you can jack a car up and check each individual wheel, obviously that's better. But I realise it's not always practical. As you can see, this car is wet, and the paintwork can look absolutely immaculate on it. Now, to be fair, the paintwork in this car isn't too bad, but don't always go off that. Another thing to check is make sure none of the lights are cracked. As we can see, one of the spotlights is cracked on this car here. Now, they might say, oh, that's not a big deal, you can get one of them for a couple of quid. Well, you might, but I mean, it could also be, you know, 100 quid. So you have to take this into account. If you've got a couple of bad tyres and maybe a broken light, you could be spending 300 or 400 quid quite quickly, depending on what car you have. So, you know, just also kind of bear that in mind. Another thing everyone always bangs on about is, oh, it's got low mileage. Now, low mileage isn't necessarily better. In fact, if I was looking at a car, and let's just say, for example, it's a 2005, and I was looking at one with 20,000 miles on and the other with 80,000 miles on, then I honestly will be going for the one with the 80,000 miles, providing I check out the car and it looks okay. The reason is, when a car sits up, that's no good for a car sitting up. Things perish, all the rubbers go. If it's been only got a very few mileage on it, then it's mostly been owned by a little old man or a little old woman that just drives it to church every day or every weekend, which isn't good for a car. No matter what people say, honestly, that isn't good for a car, because the car needs to be driven properly. It needs to be, you know, started every day. It needs to. A car with low mileage on can have more problems than a car with high mileage on. Another thing you want to check, if you can, is see when the timing belt was done. What I normally say when I ask people, or people ask me to look at a car, I say, look, regardless, you have to service the car and change the timing belt, because you just don't know if it's been done. So take that into account. If your timing belt's going to cost you 300 or 400 quid, we'll try and get 300 or 400 quid off the price, and then you know you can put that money back into the car. You know it's had a brand new timing belt, and you're okay. You're not relying on someone else's word on that. Also, give the car a good look round to make sure there's no dints, or well, even the dints is not so much of a problem. But another good thing you want to check is you want to open the boot lid, and you want to check for any damage, any rear end damage that's maybe happened, because that rear end damage is very difficult to fix without start replacing for belly plans and stuff, and depending on the car it might not be worthwhile doing. So always a good thing, if you've got a carpet, lift up the carpet. If you've got the carpets near the side, just pull the carpets back, make sure there's no damage, there's no obvious signs of any damage, because believe me, that can be very expensive to fix, and it could even be, the car could be written off. So always check underneath the carpets. Another important thing I always say to people, and when you're buying the car, you want to ask the person, say, look, I want to see this engine cold, so I'm coming down, it's going to take me 3 hours to get down. Whatever you do, don't start the car until I get there. Make sure the car is really, really cold, because if it's cold and you've got problems with your engine in the morning, or even problem with your gearbox, you will hear it. If the car is warm, when a car is warm and the gearbox is warm, it can hide an awful lot of problems that you maybe don't know. You know, even burning oil and stuff like that, a hell of a lot of problems. If you say to the person, right, don't start the car, you get down, the car is warm, I tell you here and now, walk away. If the person is genuine, he will say, or she will say, okay, I won't start the car, you know, now I understand they might need it to go to work, but you say, well, okay, let's go down on a Sunday when they're not working. You know, you can get around it. If they start the car and you've asked them not to, you know there's a problem. Walk away straight away. And don't be afraid to walk away either. Don't think you have to buy the first car, and don't fall in love with the car just on looks alone. You might think, oh, I've always wanted one of these. It's the worst thing. Don't let your heart rule your head. It's the worst thing you can do, especially buying a car, because you can cause yourself thousands of pounds worth of repair bills. Another thing which is good to do is never meet somebody in a petrol station or in town or anything like that, because one or two things. One, the car isn't going to be cold, and the other thing is, it's good to see where someone lives. For a couple of reasons. One, if you have a problem, you always know where they live, which is a good thing. And also, you can kind of see from their house, so you can kind of see if it's a respectable place, or if the house is nice and tidy, because that does make a difference. You know, if someone is rough in a house, they're going to be rough with the car. So it's good to kind of know these things. So always meet them at the house with the car cold. Other thing is, I know people that have done it, they've just brought the car because they've liked the colour. Now, you know, that is very dodgy too, because you just don't know what's happening. So that's just going to be a few tips. There's millions more, but you really need to kind of get cars on the lift properly and do that, which sometimes isn't really practical. Obviously, take it for a test drive. Once you're taking it for a test drive, make sure it's a good test drive. Try and take it down a bad road, and listen out for any bumps. Also, a good thing to do is try and get it up to speed, take your hands off the steering wheel and press the brakes quite hard. See if the car dives to the left or the right. The car should kind of brake nice and straight. You know, it shouldn't pull to the left or pull to the right, anything like that. Get it up to 60 miles an hour, make sure there's no vibrations, make sure there's nothing like that. You know, just a few little simple things like that can save you an absolute fortune. So that's really it, really. That's kind of, you know, all I can really say on that matter. If you follow them simple tips, you will find a better car out there, and just take your time. You know, you're spending a lot of money on a car, depending on what car you're buying. Even if it's only a cheap car, if it's the only money you've got, it's still a hell of a lot of money. So just be aware of certain things to look for. Other thing obviously is rust. Rust can be a nightmare, and again, and there's no point me going into this video because it'd just be too long and boring, but you can just look at the arches, look at the sills, make sure there's no rust and stuff. That's where they normally kind of go first. If you've got rusty arches, there's a chance you've got rust underneath the car too. You know, you're not going to be able to check everything on the day, it's just going to be impossible. But with these few little tips, you're going to be able to check a lot of things that can save you a fortune. But like I said, the two most important thing is, don't believe the person that's selling the car, don't believe anything they say, and also don't buy a car when it's wet. Simple as that. They're the two kind of big ones, and everything else can kind of fall into place after that. So look, hope it helps. Thumbs up and subscribe, and don't forget, get your hands dirty. See you for the next one.